Liberty Nation with Tim Donner.
His people waited for weeks for him to reemerge as a private citizen, breathless with anticipation about what he would say and do when he would eventually emerge from his relative post-presidential silence. And Donald Trump broke that silence in a big way at the premier event on the annual conservative calendar, the CPAC conference over last weekend in Orlando, Florida. Notable for what he ruled out and what he refused to rule out in the near future. LibertyNation.com's Jeff Charles was there and joins us now with reflections and maybe even some cool inside information from the CPAC conference. Welcome back, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. We might well have expected, or at least understood, if the mood among conservative activists was gloomy or forlorn after this last election when they won nothing. Was that the mood at this big event, or was it more upbeat than that?
Not even close. I mean, after the election, yes, there was some gloominess going on. Some people were very downtrodden. But at CPAC, it was totally different. Very upbeat, very optimistic. These people are ready to make some things happen and affect some positive change. And a lot of it is about Trump, the anticipation of his speech, but it was just a very positive mood overall about the agenda that they want to pursue. So all that defeatism, it's gone now. It has no place here anymore. And I saw that at CPAC.
Well, that's really interesting. That's not the answer I might have expected. But one issue, probably the single issue that sits over the conservative movement, Republicans, GOP, is election integrity. Because so many conservatives, Republicans, did not believe that the outcome that was reported in the last election was on the up and up. So how much discussion was there? How significant was talk about election integrity among these conservative activists?
Yeah, election integrity was a dominant theme throughout the whole event, even leading up to President Trump's speech. After his speech, I actually got to do some interviews with some people that were in attendance. And there were two main things that they brought up. One of them was election integrity, ensuring that future elections are on the up and up, as you said, and to make sure that, there isn't room for the amount of questionable activity that took place during this past election. Whether you believe that the election was stolen or not, everybody agrees that there were some serious issues in the way this election was conducted.
Now, what was the sense from the conservative activists at the CPAC conference about a couple of things? Whether Trump should run again, but also their sense of whether he will run one more time.
Yeah, so, I mean, there were people who were talking about whether he will run again. Mainly, it was just that anticipation, right? I mean, especially when he was going to speak on Sunday, they were like, is he going to announce a run? And you know Trump, I mean, he didn't really lay that out. He kind of teased it, but he didn't full out say he was running or not running. I think a lot of people would like it if he ran again, but I think even if he doesn't, what they want is somebody who will continue Trump's policies. And I think that was my main takeaway. Trump may run, he may not. He may get the nomination, he may not. But the bottom line is that the base wants his approach to governance.
And to that point, Jeff, the poll of people attending CPAC indicated 97% job approval for Trump, which is remarkable considering 4 years earlier, perhaps most of the attendees were not even convinced that Trump was a real conservative. Did you get a sense that people were surprised or perhaps even shocked by how faithful Trump was to the conservative agenda and beyond?
Yeah, that wasn't really discussed as much, but I think after the 4 years, they weren't quite as shocked. But I think they elected him because they knew that nobody in the GOP establishment was actually going to do what they said that they were going to do. The main difference between Trump and the establishment is that they both say they support certain policies, but Trump was one that actually pushed to get those policies enacted. And in some areas,
right,
he's not as conservative as people would like him to be, but in other areas he is. But the bottom line is, when it comes to implementation, he is probably more conservative than a lot of his predecessors. I asked people, what the most important part of President Trump's speech was. The first thing was election integrity, like I said, and the other was the establishment, getting rid of establishment figures in the GOP, the squishy Republicans who basically function as diet Democrats. I'll tell you right now, the base is done with establishment figures who get elected by making promises that they know they're not going to keep, and then getting into Washington and saying, well, you got to vote for me because otherwise there'll be a Democrat. They're done with that. We're going into a new era where we actually expect results. That's the feel that I got from people at CPAC.
Well, maybe the progressives felt that way in 2016. Like, we're not going to settle for Hillary Clinton. We want a real progressive, or we're not going to get energized about this election. And, of course, she lost. Jeff, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Jeff Charles, LibertyNation.com.
Hi, I'm Lisa K. Donner, along with Mark Angelides, Sarah Cowgill, Tim Donner, and Scott Cosenza, and this is Liberty Nation.
Now let's take a look at the LibertyNation.com electoral leaderboard. It's still 238 for Joe Biden.
What if stories and legends can offer us the key to unraveling the hottest political issues of the day and apply their lessons to understanding the chaos of modern politics?
Impeach 45!
Only where freedom of speech is honored can people who look, sound, or think differently be truly free.
If you're discussing something that's difficult, the probability that you're not going to offend each other is zero.
President-elect of the United States of America, Donald Trump.
Donald J. Trump is now president.
With one click, Liberty Nation delivers tomorrow's news.
And remember, liberty.
Today.
All the time and everywhere.
LibertyNation.com.